Well, the Nicodemus Project.
The Nicodemus Project.
The Nicodemus Project.
The Nicodemus Project.
Nicodemus Project.
So the Nicodemus Project is...
What the Nicodemus Project is...
The Nicodemus Project is...
a seed to get us all thinking.
It's like a movement to get new things going in different churches.
We're looking at who we are as a church, at the ministries that we're already accomplishing, and the directions that we need to go in to do ministry in the future.
When Nicodemus came to see Jesus, Jesus said that the only way he could experience the kingdom of God is through being born again.
And to be reborn or renewed is in fact what we have as the diocese been endeavoring to do, to renew the ministry of the church.
There were several reports before the Synod of 2009 that all seemed to be pulling in the same direction, and Synod discerned that the church needs to transform and change in order to engage the challenges of the future.
And really the idea is to see the development of spiritual growth, financial and numerical growth within the Diocese of Fredericton.
The Nicodemus Project has 5 points, and it's a distillation of the work that has gone on in the diocese over the last 10 years. And of the 5 points, we discovered the first point, to relearn what it is to be Anglican.
And Christianity, of course, is the most important thing, because Anglicanism is one branch of Christianity. But secondly, we are Anglicans, and we have a unique way of worship and governance. And I think if we're going to bring people into our own denomination, we have to be able to answer some of their questions.
There's a growing desire to relearn Anglicanism, and out of a request from within the parish, there's going to be an adult, we're calling it an adult confirmation class, but it's an opportunity for people to come and just re-explore and relearn their Anglican roots.
Some of us get so used to the words of the service that we can easily tune out in a service. We can forget what we're saying, and I think it's important to know why we're doing things the way we're doing in order that it's more meaningful for us.
There have been times when I've been asked, how can you be an Anglican and a Christian at the same time? And we need to realize that within New Brunswick itself, there's a real diversity of Christian expression. And sometimes we've sort of fallen back and been a little shy about expressing who we are. I think you could probably quickly define who what a United Church member would be like, or what a Baptist church member would be like, or what a Presbyterian church member would be like. But you might, people might draw a blank if you ask them, well, what's an Anglican like? What's it like to be Anglican? And that's something that we need to relearn and take hold of and not be ashamed of.
So I tried in the articles Anglican 101, I tried to address some of those issues. Why do we do certain things? And I've discovered that many people have wondered those very same questions. Why do we do what we do in a service? And in many cases it's historical, because we are an old denomination. And then I've also tried to address the different ways of governance that we have in our Anglican Church as compared to, say, the United Church or the Baptist Church. There have been a number of positive responses, which is very encouraging, and people have said, well, I always wondered that, but I've been afraid to ask.
Asking the question, who are we as Anglicans, is also a very important question. I would put the caveat onto that by saying that as Anglicans we have sometimes, if not often, been very apologetic people. And I think that we have to stop being in that negative sense of who we are and look for the best of what constitutes being an Anglican and celebrate it. And we're not good at celebrating. we're very good at navel gazing and wondering how we can make this better or make that better. And I think that we need to celebrate who we are.
You know, we have a long and strong tradition that other denominations appreciate in music as well. We have a wonderful musical tradition that has been adopted by other denominations, some of which we see as more successful than us right now. So perhaps we have to go back to our roots and say, well, what made the church successful in an earlier generation? And part of that success, I think, was, even though Anglicanism has always had a broad variety of membership with different emphasis on different parts of doctrine, there was a core doctrine that we all shared. And if we get away from that, I think we have to a certain extent, then we lose our anchor. And that's when we start to worry about the future, because we don't know where we're going, in part because we don't know where we've come from.
In order to be a leader in any organization, it's a lifelong learning process. And that which is required to train our leaders, a number of clergy will openly admit that the last book that they purchased was when they graduated from theological college, because the work got in the way. And keeping up with the nuances and that are brought about by change is not we're not always totally equipped to deal with those things.
The clergy conference at the end of the summer has become more focused in that area. For example, Gary Nicolosi came to speak to us last year, and that was helpful. We've also had a number of initiatives that have come from other groups within the diocese. Bishop Salmon coming to the diocese at least twice, and that's been extremely helpful. And so we've seen those kind of things develop. Something that's happening in the fall, in November, will be that we'll have a visit from Nick Brotherwood, and Nick is the national officer for Fresh Expressions of Church, and he will be coming to do a 2-day event in the diocese, 1 day for clergy and another for anyone who wants to come.
There's also a sense of renewing the leadership as well. We're trying to work on vestry not as a group of individuals who get together to do the business, but as a body which looks at the ministry being done within the parish, and how do we as the leaders of the parish encourage that and move that ministry out.
With the changing demographics, parish support is required to meet the challenges.
We've got to see that those scriptures were written in times of tremendous upheaval, social upheaval and transition times, but that they all speak of being able to trust God, that God will guide us, that He will direct us, that He will provide us with a way forward, but that guidance and that direction of God will always involve us loving one another, being kind to each other, reaching out to those who are suffering, those who are victims of some of the decisions that have been made in our society, taking risks, real significant risks, to help those who are really at risk.
The one thing that amazes me at Camp Medley with the building projects that have been going on here, the cabins were actually put up 2 years before I was appointed, and the new dining hall actually was the year that I was appointed, and then this lovely staff house that I'm sitting in front of. The neat thing, I think, in either coming from another diocese where money was being raised, the fact that the money has come from the people sitting in the pews in this diocese, I think, is a huge testament to the people in this diocese. It's, apart from this building, the staff house, where the government did give us funding for this, the other buildings have been built from people's sacrificial giving. And they're big buildings, they're not small. And I think that that is an amazing testament to the people in the diocese, that they are willing to dig deep into their pockets to fund such an essential ministry in this diocese.
Yes, a Foundation for Life came about partly because Bishop Salmon came to talk to us. And he had something very similar in his diocese, which had worked really well, which was for innovative risk-taking projects, a fundraiser in order to provide money for those innovative risk-taking projects. And we thought it would be great to emulate that in this diocese. We didn't call it the same thing, we called it a Foundation for Life. But it's a fundraising project in order to provide funds for those same projects that I just mentioned. And we ask for $25 from each Anglican adult per year and $5 for each child. And we had a very good response to our first effort last year.
We collected in 2010 over $20,000, which was great, and we're able to distribute that in various ways, because the intention of Foundation for Life is not to hold on to money. The intention is for it to come in and be distributed to those who apply for those funds. And really the application is about innovative projects. So for example, in the Cambridge Narrows area, they wanted to employ a person to work with families, and so we were able to provide them with some money in order to be able to achieve that.
2 or 3 parishes wanted money for audiovisual equipment, for projectors, the in-focus projectors that hook onto a computer, and screens, and maybe some sound equipment. That sort of thing. It's expensive for a small parish, especially a small parish that has been experiencing difficulty financially and is trying to struggle to maintain its buildings and so on. And to find extra money for those sorts of things is hard. So this provides them with some funding.
Another church wanted to develop its puppet ministry.
Puppet ministry started when one of our rectors, our past rector that we had here, Reverend Drummond, how was it that it went? She kind of introduced us to the cathedral puppeteers. She had brought them through and just kind of said, well, maybe the youth group would like to try this as a new step forward in their ministry. So the group that we had at that time said, well, let's give it a shot.
I'm starting to see what you mean, but I'm not like them, and they were not teenagers.
It was like she was saying, it's you go to church and somebody lectures you what you should, you know, believe in and what you should be learning from the Bible, but when you're actually doing it and like learning it yourself, it's a lot easier and it's funner to do it that way than you know, just kind of sitting there and getting somebody to tell you what you think you should be doing.
Young people are harder to come by in the church, especially in smaller parishes, and I think, focus on youth is important, and having programs that apply to them, like vacation Bible schools are great, and like bringing kids and bringing young people into the church, but also involving them in ministry is what I think is going to keep them, and making sure that you can help them establish their faith instead of just, you know, putting these fancy, expensive programs in place and, you know, letting someone else deal with them. Is that interacting with young people, like everyone, it's a whole congregation activity, is interacting with the young people, and you know, get to know them and help like teach them what you know, because you've been around a lot longer than they have and you probably have more life experience. So I mean, it's just, and teaching them and helping them grow and involving everyone, because you can't just, you know, get someone to be, you know, the youth leader and take care of everything. It definitely helps to have someone to spearhead it, to have someone who's committed to doing that, but I think it needs to involve the whole congregation, and you can't just leave it to one person. And that's how you get young people invested in the church.
That change is part of being a human being. It's also part of being a Christian. There's always change going on. It's just whether or not have some control over that change and understand what kind of change should take place.
And I think too that we have to look beyond, you know, what we've been doing for 50 years, and if we see that it's not working, then we have to try something new, and we have to change something. Doesn't mean we change everything or, you know, throw out everything that we know, but I think God is constantly, you know, God has so many ways of reaching to people, and if we've been using one, then we can try another. And
even though it's scary, I think it's really worth doing.
I guess everyone is skeptical to change because Anglicans don't change well. Anglicans react to a financial need within a building or a project or a community thing. They don't react well to the word transformational change because they don't understand it. And I don't think we Anglicans do a good job at articulating just what is change.
What they really want to say is change by choice, is that no matter what happens, the church is going to change.
About 15% of people are actually fired up by change. So there's about 15% of the people, it seems to me, that are really excited by change. 15% of people are against every change. And 70% of the people, all the bulk of them, are prepared to go along with changes as long as they've been shown that they're reasonable and sensible and well-grounded. So it seems to me leaders in the church in a time of change need to be communicating. We need to be helping people understand the reasons. So we're not changing things just because we like changing things. We're changing things because the world is changing rapidly, and we need to be a church that's relevant to the time in which we're called to serve.
And that's beneficial for us to look at what is it we're doing, because we don't always get things right. We won't. We're not perfect. And if we don't evaluate and say, oh, where should we tweak, or should we drop that program, or should we do this, we won't grow. And growth is the thing.
And I think the older and more established the institution, the longer we can probably expect it to take.
And it's just, I feel like the church itself, because it's been around for so long, it needs to be renewed. And I think that's what the Nicodemus Project is like trying to renew ourselves in Christ and in each other.
And we have to stop being afraid of the people who are going to say, well, I don't want anything to change. We're living in a generation of the people who have gone through the most change. My mom and dad had ice boxes.
I wouldn't say that there's going to be tough times to overcome. What I would say is that it's going to be an ongoing process. You can't say, we're going to grow for 2 years and then we're going to stop. The whole thing is going to be evolving always. It's always going to evolve. It's always going to be changing to a certain extent to deal with the situation at the time. I think it's going to be exciting. I think it's going to be fantastic. I think if you're in Sunday school now, when you're old and grumpy like me and you're still involved and you're still excited, what a wonderful life.
Where the church will be 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, or 100 years from now, it will be different. But we need to choose what that difference will be.
I would feel that God calls all of us constantly to look at different ways of doing ministry. God calls us here to look at different ways of doing ministry, and I think that what we're being called to is growth in ourselves, growth to invite other people into our churches and welcome them and show them the love of Christ, to show them that we Christians are loving people and that we welcome them and we embrace them, and that we walk this journey together, and that we support one another on this journey of faith together.
But when we got into the discussion about putting the four churches together in Moncton, we were the ones who were able to say, well, it doesn't matter, get on with something, let's get it going here, because we've been there, it doesn't matter. We just keep on going and things will work out.
Well, I think we often think of growth in terms of numbers in our church, of people who are in, how many people are coming to church on Sunday morning, how much is being donated in envelopes, but I don't think that's what growth means. I think growth is how far are we reaching outside our church walls, and how much does our community know the church as a compassionate family, who reaches out and who's there for those who need it, and not just to put on great potlucks or that kind of thing. I think it's really important to. It's riskier and it's more uncomfortable, to go out and to connect with other people outside of our church. But I think it's really important. That's what Jesus told us to do.
To stop focusing on ourselves and stop worrying about things, and to start to remember why we're here in the first place. That we're here to tell people about Jesus Christ and to bring them into being His followers. And I think that's important, to keep our focus on what we're about and get away from ourselves.
For the church, I don't have any fear. Because it's God's church. And I believe that the future has never been brighter for the church. Because people, God's invitation to return to Him is an open invitation. And in time, people will take it.
Well, the Nicodemus Project.
The Nicodemus Project.
The Nicodemus Project.
The Nicodemus Project.
Nicodemus Project.
So the Nicodemus Project is...
What the Nicodemus Project is...
The Nicodemus Project is...
a seed to get us all thinking.
It's like a movement to get new things going in different churches.
We're looking at who we are as a church, at the ministries that we're already accomplishing, and the directions that we need to go in to do ministry in the future.
When Nicodemus came to see Jesus, Jesus said that the only way he could experience the kingdom of God is through being born again.
And to be reborn or renewed is in fact what we have as the diocese been endeavoring to do, to renew the ministry of the church.
There were several reports before the Synod of 2009 that all seemed to be pulling in the same direction, and Synod discerned that the church needs to transform and change in order to engage the challenges of the future.
And really the idea is to see the development of spiritual growth, financial and numerical growth within the Diocese of Fredericton.
The Nicodemus Project has 5 points, and it's a distillation of the work that has gone on in the diocese of the last 10 years. And of the 5 points, we discovered the first point, to relearn what it is to be Anglican.
And Christianity, of course, is the most important thing, because Anglicanism is one branch of Christianity. But secondly, we are Anglicans and we have a unique way of worship and governance. And I think if we're going to bring people into our own denomination, we have to be able to answer some of their questions.
There's a growing desire to relearn Anglicanism, and out of a request from within the parish, there's going to be an adult, we're calling it an adult confirmation class, but it's an opportunity for people to come and just re-explore and relearn their Anglican roots.
Some of us get so used to the words of the service that we can easily tune out in a service. We can forget what we're saying, and I think it's important to know why we're doing things the way we're doing in order that it's more meaningful for us.
There have been times when I've been asked, how can you be an Anglican and a Christian at the same time? And we need to realize that within New Brunswick itself, there's a real diversity of Christian expression. And sometimes we've sort of fallen back and been a little shy about expressing who we are. I think you could probably quickly define what a United Church member would be like, or what a Baptist church member would be like, or what a Presbyterian church member would be like. But you might, people might draw a blank if you ask them, well, what's an Anglican like? What's it like to be Anglican? And that's something that we need to relearn and take hold of and not be ashamed of.
So I tried in the articles Anglican 101